Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to be back live here on our Thursday Lives. I'm Dr. Jerry Dreessen, the Executive Director here at the Association of PEMF Professionals. And those of you that are in the PEMF world already know there's a lot of stuff going on in the legislation. And so we're going to be kind of jumping in with a few things. Let me change my size here so you can see this better. There we go. And what we want to do is to help you uh, with your presence online for better protections for animal PEMF practitioners. And what I want to do is go through the slides here that we have prepared to help you learn a little bit more about what you can do to be proactive on your presence, the things that you say and do, and why that's important. So the update today is more about bills and rules. It's real world risk exists when laws are unclear. And complaint driven enforcement can put businesses under pressure. Lack of enforcement of outdated laws is not the same as legal protection. And one complaint can create stress, uncertainty, and disruption. We had a practitioner that got, I think there was something that was on her website that got complained against, not even by a user. It wasn't even like, face to face, somebody just scanning a website. And I think that's what's going on is there are people that's what they do for a living. They'll go out and look at all websites and make sure that there's compliance. And if not, sometimes they try to hold you ransom to it. And I've seen that in other professions where if you don't get rid, well, I think was it back 15 years ago, 20 years ago, if you had an image that you hadn't paid for or that it was found an original one, then they would say you need to pay me $2,000 and take this off your website. And it's like, well, I want to talk to the originator of that artwork. Nope, you're in violation, and it was some very nefarious people would do that. But again, it's similar in what we say in our profession. So today's focus is going to be all about the reported complaint in Michigan, why this matters beyond Michigan, what's happening in Texas, Oklahoma, and what practitioners can do now as defensive compliance and what AOPP is doing through advocacy. So the Michigan complaint, there was a reported situation where the complaint is based, excuse me, I'm just fixing my microphone. The complaint is based on language on her website, and the allegation is that she is practicing veterinary medicine. The investigation is ongoing, but she believes she's already provided sufficient evidence that she is not. So it's an interpretation war again. And what this highlights for all practitioners is that outdated laws do not become safe simply because they are not consistently enforced. And the lack of enforcement cannot be relied on as a safe business strategy, and a complaint-driven system can activate old, broad, and unclear language at any time. And a business can be pushed into a defensive position even before the facts are fully resolved. Just moving my slides around here. There we go. And a complaint-driven enforcement is what it means in practice is enforcement often begins because someone files a complaint, and a complaint may be legitimate, mistaken, exaggerated, or strategically framed. And once the process begins, then the practitioner still bears the burden of responding. Whether you are guilty or innocent, you have to provide the burden of proof. So at its worst, there's nothing wrong, but now it takes you 2, 3, 4 hours of your time to put this information together. So the reality for practitioners is that the regulatory risk is not only about what the law says on paper, but it's also about whether outdated or overly broad language remains available to be used against practitioners. And if the laws were unclear, broad, or outdated, non enforcement today does not guarantee safety tomorrow. It could just be a quick change in the wording on old laws to make it relevant again. So the complaint itself can create a business risk, but time, reputation, documentation, and operations can all be affected. So Michigan and Oklahoma signify a larger pattern. And Oklahoma has also mentioned the reality of complaint driven enforcement, which is totally absurd. But members are exposed even when they are trying to operate carefully. Lack of legal clarity increases vulnerability. Michigan highlights the best business risk of relying on outdated laws simply because they have not been actively enforced. And Oklahoma highlights how quickly practitioners can be exposed when legal clarity is not firmly established. And together they show why practitioners need both preparation now and better legal frameworks going forward. So important member guidance and disclaimers. So the AOPP, we can provide education, risk awareness guidance, practical recommendations, advocacy support. What we cannot provide is individual legal advice, case specific legal representation, and advice that replaces licensed counsel. And that's because each state varies a little bit. So you need to work with somebody that knows the law in your state if there's ever a complaint. But usually in AOPP world, the biggest thing is somehow somebody thought that you said on your website that you were diagnosing and you're not a vet. So I mean that's usually what's causing all of this. So that's the important thing, is making sure that your website is scrubbed from any type of, if your horse is suffering from blank, I would imagine you could put it in quotes, diagnosed by a veterinary physician, or if a veterinarian diagnosed your horse as having blank and wants you to use PEMF, we can help with that. Those are the kinds of things that there shouldn't be a problem with. But as soon as you are making claims that you can help treat all of these things and you don't have the license to say that, that's when you get hung up. And again, information, it's for education and risk awareness purpose only. It's not legal advice. So if contacted by a vet board, seek qualified legal counsel immediately. And things to respond to. First of all, do not send any informal explanations or assume that you can clear it up quickly. Don't agree to interviews. Don't submit documents casually. And don't make rushed website changes without thinking strategically. Defensive compliance, what practitioners can do now. Review your website like a regulator would. So your website may be the first thing that's being reviewed. Your service descriptions matter. Your FAQs matter. Testimonials matter. Blog content matters. Practitioner bios matter. And social media matters. So those are all the things that they're going to go after. Joanne, hello. Quick shout outs. We got Florida and Ohio with us today. Thank you. And then watch for language that's outside your scope. So again, diagnosis, treatment, prescription, prognosis, vet medicine language, and then clinical decision making. High risk wording to review carefully, and all it takes for these people is to send out a bot to scrape sites have these words, and then they send the website to them. So they're not even doing it manually now. They're just doing it through the internet bots. So treat, heal, cure, correct, resolve for arthritis, for lameness, for injury. And then make your scope unmistakably clear. State what you do, state what you do not do. Clarify that you do not diagnose or prescribe or prognose, and represent your services as vet med. And then also when veterinarian referral is appropriate. Another shout out from Vermont. Hi, Vermont. And then also tighten the forms and records. So your intake forms should not read like medical charts unless used by a licensed professional. Session notes should reflect services provided and observations without diagnosing. Owner stated goals should be documented clearly. Disclosure and informed consent language should be used consistently. So again, the burden is going to be on us to conform to everything and to be as squeaky clean as possible, because all it takes is somebody who wants to make money off of you by having you pay an extortion, going through and finding things that are wrong with your website, or they interpret to be wrong. And they may be wrong, but now the burden is on you to provide them to be right. And again, have a response plan before you need one, and save copies of everything. Identify legal counsel in advance. You may even right now just kind of scan your area for somebody that does it and just open up a conversation with them. Get to know somebody already in case you need that. Have them in your back pocket. And now let's jump into some updates. So Oklahoma had the potential to become the model for a more practical animal PEMF pathway. The PEMF specific certification or pathway language did not remain in the final version, and it moved through the House, and it was referred in the Senate to Agriculture and Wildlife. We're in communication with the board, and we're working toward identifying a new sponsor to the bill, and so that updated language can be added. We'll let you know more about that as that happens. Texas, why it's different, is that Oklahoma reflects the loss of a workable pathway. Texas reflects the risk of PEMF being pulled more explicitly into a veterinary regulatory framework. So the main concern there is the draft rule language could replace PEMF more directly within the veterinary regulated musculoskeletal manipulation language, and which raises significant concern for non-vet practitioners. So the current focus is revised drafts of chapters 571 and 573 are happening, and we're monitoring the language, and we'll let you know more about that as it happens too. Hi Beth from PA, glad to have you on board. And then on the our policy position and advocacy work is that it's just not reactive work. It's part of a long-term effort. So our goal is working for the end game as opposed to the short term. So creating relationships with all of these people is more important to us than the short term. And we're not arguing for no standards. We support the right for standards, the right standards. And the distinction that matters is supportive limited scope services are not the same as veterinary medicine. The AOPP believes in better frameworks, and that we should reflect that distinction clearly. We support a narrow, accountable, device-neutral framework that clearly separates supportive limited scope services from actual practice of veterinary medicine. Even the devices that you have, go to the main website that sells them, and if they're making those claims, you may be rolled into that by buying that product. So double check that as well. But we support education, insurance, truthful communication, defined boundaries, and appropriate referral practices. What we do not support is language so broad that it erases any practical path for responsible non veterinary practitioners to operate lawfully. And again, AOPP is actively engaged in a variety of ways, updating the website with regulatory developments and public facing explanations, publishing updates and resources for members and the public, providing public comment and policy input on bills, rules, and draft language, and of course, reaching out to lawmakers and decision makers. The more that they are educated, and that's what we've been doing, but unfortunately, there was a connection made and statements made so that that language got taken off before it got passed. So, explaining PEMF and the impact of overly broad veterinary language, advising members and the public on how to communicate effectively with lawmakers, attending veterinary board meetings in Oklahoma, and then later this month in Texas, connecting with stakeholders who can influence future language, and then drafting and refining policy recommendations for updated practice, act language, clear exclusions, better defined pathways, and related legislation. So, in closing, Michigan shows the risk of relying on outdated laws simply because they have not been actively enforced. Oklahoma shows what happens when a workable pathway does not stay in the bill. And then Texas shows how rule language can pull PEMF more deeply into a veterinary framework. So we're working really hard on your behalf to help reestablish the correct language and where PEMF should actually be living. And what helps us is the veterinarians who are using PEMF that know that they're not going to be able to handle it all and that there is no real need to have your license as a vet in order to operate PEMF. And as long as there is a viable certification course that's out there, they're fine with that. So again, it's educating the people that don't know that is, I guess, our biggest thing. So final takeaways for PEMF professionals are these. Prepare your business like a complaint could happen. Support the advocacy work needed to create better legal frameworks, and do not respond to regulators without legal counsel. Those are the big ones. So yeah, go through your site and just all of those words that we talked about, do a search and see if any of those words show up on your website. So let me scroll through real quick. Here we go. So check your website and see if any of these words show up in any form, and if they do, that they are written or introduced in a way that explains why they're there. And those are some of the probably the biggest thing that you could do now. So again, why AOPP is pushing for better protections for animal PEMF practitioners. There are scanning bots right now going through everybody's websites to make sure that the language is there or not there or explained. And again, we don't know who is doing most of this, but when we find out, we want to have a face-to-face conversation and walk away with everybody knowing what's going on and not having to go through this hassle. We knew that it was coming because of AOPP, how popular PEMF is becoming in the world and in our, in our lives. So it's a growing pain, and we can overcome it, is the bottom line. So again, thank you for your time. And yes, I do have a little bit of a hoarse voice coming through the weekend, but I appreciate those of you that are popping in lines here. So take this information, use it, ask us questions on it. If you're not a member, this is the reason to become one, because your money helps us travel to these places, helps us explain these things, creates our workforce where we can advocate on your behalf. And then also take today's video and share it, send it to somebody. And oh, there's Kathy. Yep. And that's the great thing about this, is it is recorded, so you'll be able to go back through and check it all out. But share these on your channels with your friends, with people that use PEMF. And I look forward again to next week talking to you, and I'll have a much clearer throat. So again, thank you for your time. Take care. We'll see you next week.